Hey there, I'm Madison, and I've got a story that will blow your mind. Imagine planning the perfect honeymoon, only to have your mother-in-law steal the money you work so hard for. Sounds insane, right? But that's just the beginning. Her greed didn't just ruin our future plans. It set off a chain of events that would shatter everything I thought I knew about family. What happens when someone close to you crosses the line? Stay tuned to find out. You won't believe what happens next. The sun blazed down, warming the faces of the guests as they settled into the chairs, watching us exchange vows. The wedding reception was in full swing, guests mingling, laughter echoing, and the clinking of glasses punctuating the celebration. I was supposed to feel overjoyed, but there was an undercurrent of unease I couldn't shake. The day had been a whirlwind of beautiful moments, but something I couldn't yet place, felt off. I tried to shake it off, focusing on Ethan. He looked so handsome in his black tuxedo, a slight smile playing on his lips, his hand resting gently on mine as we stood in front of all our family and friends. Ethan was my rock. He had been since we met. Yet even as I stood there with him, exchanging our vows in front of everyone, I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. Then, just as we finished cutting the cake and everyone began to settle down, my mother-in-law, Veronica, grabbed the mic from the wedding coordinator with a dramatic flair. Her perfectly manicured nails glistened as she adjusted the microphone, smiling at the guests like she was about to announce the most important thing of the evening. "Excuse me, everyone," she began, her voice too calm for what I expected to hear. "I have an important announcement regarding the honeymoon." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. I exchanged a quick glance with Ethan, confused but trying to stay composed. Veronica's lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I've decided to cancel Madison and Ethan's honeymoon trip. We will be using the money for something more beneficial." A wave of confusion washed over me, followed by an immediate sense of humiliation. It took me a moment to realize what she was actually saying. The honeymoon we had planned for months, the one I had looked forward to, dreamed about, was gone. Just like that. The room held its collective breath, and I felt my stomach twist into knots. "What?" I whispered under my breath, not knowing if I was speaking to myself or anyone else. Ethan's face went pale as he looked at his mother, then at me. His jaw tightened. He hadn't said a word, not one. My gaze locked with his, but no comfort came from his eyes, just tension. My heart pounded in my chest, and I had to fight the urge to burst into tears. The silence lingered, heavy and suffocating, until Veronica, ever the actress, added, "And I trust you all understand that family is more important than anything, especially something as trivial as a honeymoon." The sting of her words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt like the room had closed in around me, my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. A cold sweat broke out across my back as I looked around, expecting some sort of support. Instead, I saw only confused and uncomfortable expressions from our guests. I glanced at Ethan again, expecting him to speak, to do something, anything, but he stayed silent. My eyes narrowed as I watched him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The honeymoon, the money, the trust I had in him, gone. "Is this a joke?" I asked, a nervous laugh escaping me. But it wasn't a joke. It couldn't be. When the laughter didn't come, when the tension only grew thicker, I pulled my phone from my bag under the table. My fingers were shaky as I opened my bank account. My stomach dropped as I saw the balance. It was empty. My honeymoon fund. Gone. A raw fury surged through me, twisting like a knife in my gut. My hands shook as I turned to Ethan, barely able to whisper, "Tell me this isn't real." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. His lips tightened in a grim line, his hand gripping the table so hard his knuckles were white. It's real," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, my voice shaking with the anger rising in my chest. You knew this was going to happen and you didn't say anything." "I didn't know how to," Ethan began, but his words trailed off. "Didn't know how to what?" I cut him off, the words barely escaping between clenched teeth. "How to protect your wife, to stand up for us?" His eyes flickered with guilt, but he said nothing. The silence between us stretched on like a chasm, and I could feel the distance growing, something breaking inside me. How could he let this happen? How could he remain silent when his mother destroyed our dreams like this? The anger, the disbelief, it all crashed in on me. The betrayal felt sharper than anything I had ever known. I had trusted Ethan with everything, and this was what he gave me. His silence was worse than the actual theft. "I never thought you'd side with her," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, the hurt in it cutting through the tension. "I didn't side with her. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't want to—" "Stop! Just stop!" I snapped. "You let it happen, Ethan. You stood by, and you let your mother ruin everything for us." The words hung in the air, thick with accusation. Ethan's gaze dropped to the table, his face a mixture of guilt and frustration, but it did nothing to ease the pain in my chest. I stood up abruptly, pushing my chair back with a sharp screech that made heads turn. The room felt suddenly small, the laughter and music fading into the background as my thoughts swirled. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I shouldn't have to fight my own husband over something like this. Madison and Ethan's wedding day, my wedding day, had gone from a dream come true to a nightmare in seconds. The house was quiet, almost eerily so, after the chaos of the wedding reception. The remnants of the day, the beautiful decorations, the empty wine glasses, the half-eaten cake, were a stark contrast to the tension that simmered between Ethan and me. We hadn't said much since the wedding, but the silence between us spoke volumes. I could feel it in my bones. This wasn't something that would just blow over. It wasn't just about the honeymoon anymore. It was about everything. About us. I stood in the kitchen, staring out the window at the Chicago skyline, the same view I had stared at with Ethan many times. The lights twinkled in the distance, but it felt different now. Everything felt distant. My phone buzzed on the counter, but I ignored it. I didn't want to hear from anyone right now. Not from Veronica, not from my friends, and certainly not from Ethan. He stepped into the kitchen, his footsteps tentative, almost as if he didn't know what kind of reception he would get. His face was strained, the weight of his silence now pressing down on him. His eyes met mine, but he didn't say anything. Not yet. "Madison," he started, his voice low and careful. "We need to talk." I turned to face him, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. "We do need to talk, but not about the wedding, not about the honeymoon. We need to talk about why you didn't say a damn word when your mother took our money." Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand to stop him. I wasn't done. "Why, Ethan, why didn't you warn me? Why did you let her do this? It's one thing for her to be a manipulative bitch, excuse my language, but it's another for you to stand by and let her destroy our future." My voice shook with a mixture of anger and pain. "I thought you were supposed to protect me, to protect us." His face darkened as I spoke. His fists clenched at his sides, the silence between us stretching thinner and thinner. He didn't answer me right away, which only made the anger build in my chest. He just stood there, a man divided by his loyalties, one foot in his wife's camp, the other in his mother's. "I didn't know how to stop her," Ethan finally said, his voice full of frustration. She's my mother, Madison. I don't know what you expect me to do." "That's not good enough, Ethan," I shot back, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "You let her do it, and you didn't think to tell me. You let her take our money." "I didn't let her do it, okay?" His voice was rising now, his defenses finally crumbling. "I didn't want her to do it, but I don't know how to stop her. You don't know what it's like dealing with her. You just don't." I stepped forward, closer now, my eyes never leaving his. "You're right. I don't know what it's like to deal with a woman who controls everything around her, but I do know what it's like to feel betrayed by the person I love. You didn't fight for me, Ethan. You didn't fight for us." There was a long pause. Ethan's eyes dropped to the floor, his chest rising and falling in deep breaths. It was almost as if the weight of the situation was finally crashing down on him, and for the first time that night, I saw something I hadn't expected. Guilt. "I was weak," he admitted, his voice softer now. "I didn't know how to stand up to her, but that's no excuse. I should have said something. I should have protected you. I scoffed, crossing my arms over my chest. You're damn right you should have. My voice was cold now, the anger simmering beneath a thick layer of hurt. You should have protected me, but you didn't. And that makes me question everything, Ethan. His face twisted in confusion, then in sorrow. He stepped closer to me, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I didn't know what he could say to fix this. I'm sorry, he whispered. I am. But I can fix this. I'll talk to her, Madison. I'll make her understand. I'll make her apologize. I'll make this right. For a moment, his words hung in the air. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that he could do this, that he could fix this mess we were in. But after everything, I couldn't find the strength to completely trust his promises. And what if she doesn't? I asked, my voice trembling. What if she laughs it off like she always does? What then? He didn't have an answer. He stood there for a long time, staring at me as though trying to figure out how to fix what had already been broken. Finally, he spoke, his voice filled with determination. I'll confront her, Madison. I'll make it clear that I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. No more lies, no more manipulation. I'm done letting her control everything. You'll see, I promise. I felt a flicker of hope, but it was fleeting. I wanted to believe him, but the pain of the betrayal lingered like a shadow, and the doubt I felt couldn't be so easily erased. Okay, I said, my voice quiet. But don't make promises you can't keep, Ethan. The silence stretched between us, a fragile truce formed from the wreckage of everything that had happened. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if it was enough. Would his words be enough to fix the rift between us? Or had too much been broken? As I turned away from him, I couldn't help but wonder, what would happen when he finally faced his mother? Would things really change, or would they continue down this destructive path? It had been a few days since the confrontation with Ethan. We'd barely spoken since then, but the silence between us was heavier than any argument. We were in the same house, yet it felt like we were miles apart. I couldn't escape the thoughts that kept swirling in my mind, the lies, the betrayal, the feeling of being so utterly alone. I had tried to focus on work, but even that felt impossible. Every meeting, every email, every call felt like it was happening on autopilot. Nothing felt real anymore. Ethan, once the person I thought I could rely on, had become a stranger to me. And as much as I hated it, my mind kept wandering back to the moment when I found out about his mother's actions. Her cold, calculating decision to sabotage everything we had worked for. But it wasn't just Veronica who had betrayed me. There was someone else, Olivia. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. At first, I had been so consumed by my anger at Ethan and Veronica that I hadn't noticed the small, subtle shifts in Olivia's behavior. She had always been my best friend, someone I trusted more than anyone else. She had stood by me when I needed someone to lean on. Or so I thought. It started with little things. She had been distant recently, not returning my calls as quickly, avoiding eye contact during our meetings. I told myself it was just the stress of everything that had been going on, but now, looking back, I could see it clearly, the signs of someone trying to distance themselves. Then came the texts. Olivia had been sending cryptic messages, ones that didn't make sense, ones that felt like she was playing some kind of game. She was supposed to be my ally, yet I began to feel like I was losing her. But it wasn't until I stumbled upon the truth that I realized how deep her betrayal ran. I had gone into her office to grab some files for a project we were working on together. When I opened the drawer to find the files, I noticed something strange, a stack of papers. At first I thought they were just notes from a previous meeting, but when I picked them up, my stomach dropped. They were emails between Olivia and Veronica. My hands shook as I read through them, each one more damning than the last. Olivia had been feeding Veronica information about me, about my plans, my projects, my personal life. And worse, she had been actively involved in undermining me at work. She had sent details to Veronica, helping her manipulate the situation and pit people against me. Every bit of trust I had placed in Olivia was shattered in those moments. I felt the anger bubbling up, rising from deep within me. How could she? How could the person I trusted the most, the person I called my friend, do this to me? I had been vulnerable with Olivia, telling her things I wouldn't have told anyone else, and she had used that trust to tear me down. I had to confront her. There was no way I could let this slide, not again, not after everything I had been through. The confrontation happened that evening. I called Olivia, her name flashing on the screen of my phone like a warning sign. When she answered, there was an unfamiliar edge to her voice. "Hey Madison, what's up?" she asked, sounding casual, but I could hear the strain underneath. "Come over," I said, my voice cold and steady. "We need to talk." She was at my place within 20 minutes. When she walked through the door, I could see the nervousness in her eyes, but she was still trying to act like everything was normal. "Hey, what's going on? You sounded serious on the phone," Olivia said, sitting down on the couch across from me. Her eyes flickered around the room, avoiding direct contact. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I held up the stack of papers I had found. Her face paled as she saw them. "You want to explain this to me?" I asked, my voice low but filled with fury. Olivia froze. Her eyes darted from the papers to my face, but she didn't speak for a long moment. Finally, she sighed and leaned back, folding her arms across her chest. "Madison, I didn't think you'd find out," she said, her voice a mix of defensiveness and guilt. "You don't understand. Veronica and she's been very persuasive. She knows how to get what she wants. And I didn't want to lose her, okay? She's my mother-in-law, and she's been a part of my life for so long. You don't get it." I could feel my hands trembling. "You didn't think I'd find out?" I repeated, the disbelief in my voice raw. "You've been feeding her information about me, sabotaging me at work, and you think it's okay? You think I wouldn't find out?" "I was just trying to protect myself," Olivia muttered, her voice growing smaller. "I didn't want to be caught in the middle of your mess. I didn't want to choose sides. But I had to, Madison. I had to pick Veronica." My heart shattered. The person I had once considered my sister, my best friend, was now a stranger who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I didn't even know how to respond. The betrayal was so deep, so personal, that the words wouldn't come. "You were never in the middle, Olivia," I said finally, my voice trembling with a mix of hurt and disbelief. "You were supposed to be on my side, and you chose her." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "But you were too focused on your own problems. I had to survive. I had to do what was best for me." The words stung. Olivia's selfishness, her manipulation of our friendship, made everything that had happened feel like it was all a game to her. It wasn't just about Ethan's betrayal or Veronica's control anymore. It was about Olivia's complete lack of loyalty. "I can't do this anymore, Olivia," I said, standing up. "I can't be around people who are so willing to destroy me for their own gain. You've crossed a line I can't come back from." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't try to argue anymore. She knew I was done. "Fine," she said coldly, standing up to leave. "I'm sorry, Madison, but I'm not the one who's been destroying everything. You've got bigger problems than me." I watched her walk out, the door closing with a quiet finality, and as the silence settled around me, I realized something. I was truly alone. I had always believed that love could conquer all, that no matter the obstacles, if two people were truly in love, they could overcome anything. But sitting across from Ethan in our living room, the weight of our shattered trust pressing down on us, I wasn't so sure anymore. The decision had been made. Ethan's voice, though firm, still carried the quiet undercurrent of doubt. The decision to sever ties with his mother was monumental. I could see the struggle behind his eyes, the guilt that gnawed at him. His mother had been a constant in his life, a woman who had shaped him, manipulated him, and controlled him. To walk away from that, it felt like he was walking away from everything he had ever known. But then there was me, his wife, the woman he had promised to protect and cherish. And yet, the road to this decision had been far from clear. It had taken him days of uncertainty and internal conflict before he finally reached this moment. "I'm doing this, Madison," Ethan said quietly, his gaze steady but not without pain. "I'm cutting her out of my life for good. I can't let her keep manipulating me, us. I'm choosing you." His words hung in the air, and though they were exactly what I had wanted to hear, I couldn't help but feel a deep pit form in my stomach. "I can't believe it's come to this," I whispered, my voice tight, betraying the storm of emotions inside me. I had spent so much of my life believing that family was everything, that love could fix any problem. But now, I wasn't so sure. How can you just cut her out like that, after all these years? "I don't know," Ethan said, running his hand through his hair, "but I do know that I can't keep living in her shadow. I've let her control me for too long, Madison. I don't want that for us, for you, for me, not anymore." The relief that I felt was palpable, but so was the fear. This wasn't just about a mother-son relationship. It was about power, control, and years of manipulation. Veronica wouldn't let this go easily. She had spent decades pulling the strings, and now we had pulled the rug out from under her. I could see it in Ethan's face. He was grappling with his own feelings of guilt. He loved his mother, despite everything, but he loved me too, and that was a choice he was finally making. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Are you really sure? Because once you do this, there's no going back." "I'm sure," he replied, his voice firm. "It's time for this family to take control of its own future, not let her dictate it anymore." I wanted to believe him. I did. But Veronica wasn't just any mother-in-law. She had a hold on Ethan that I had never fully understood until now. It wasn't just about her power over him. It was about what she had the power to do to us. And as much as I wanted to believe that Ethan's decision would be the end of it, I knew that it was only the beginning of a much darker battle. The storm came soon after. Veronica wasn't the kind of woman to take rejection lying down. The moment Ethan told her that he was going no contact, I knew we were in for a fight. It started small, rumors, little whispers among our friends. Ethan had called it the honeymoon fund debacle, but now it was bigger than that. Veronica spread word that our marriage was in trouble, that Ethan was under my control, that I was the manipulator, not her. The lies spread like wildfire, and it wasn't long before people started questioning our relationship. Was Ethan really in love with me? Was I using him? Was there more to this whole thing than met the eye? It wasn't just rumors. Veronica took it a step further. She started making threats, quiet, veiled threats. She implied that if Ethan didn't come to his senses, she would expose personal secrets about our past, secrets we didn't want anyone to know, things we had worked so hard to bury. I could see the change in Ethan. The anger in his eyes was palpable, but so was the hurt. The realization that his mother would go to such lengths to hurt him, to hurt us, made his resolve solidify. "I should have done this years ago," he said, pacing the living room. "I should have seen this coming. We both should have," I muttered, feeling the weight of our shared guilt. The damage had already been done. We were too deep in it now to pretend like it was just going to go away. But I wasn't going to sit back and let Veronica win. Not again. I had to protect us. I had to protect my marriage. "Ethan, we need to face her, confront her. We can't let her keep doing this," I said, standing up. My voice had grown steady with the determination I felt. "This has gone too far." Ethan looked at me, his eyes hardening with the same resolve. "You're right. We've already let her ruin too much. It's time to end this." The decision was made. We would confront Veronica. We would stand up to her, together. The war had officially begun, and we were ready to fight. But even as I stood there with Ethan, a sense of unease settled in my chest. I knew the battle wouldn't be easy. Veronica was ruthless. She wasn't just going to give up, and the consequences of our actions were far from clear. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let her tear us apart, not without a fight. The morning after Ethan's decision to sever ties with his mother felt like a heavy weight pressing on my chest. We had won the first battle, but I knew this wasn't over. The storm was just beginning. Ethan and I spent the night going over the financial documents that we had gathered. Ethan had been hesitant to look, but I insisted. The truth was that I could feel the ground beneath me shifting with every new discovery. Each document we uncovered revealed more of Veronica's web of control, and each one sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. There it was, the hidden truth, staring back at us. Financial transactions, some large and some small, but all pointing in the same direction. Veronica had been using Ethan's account, siphoning funds whenever she needed them. The manipulation ran deeper than I had ever imagined. She hadn't just interfered in our marriage, she'd been pulling the strings of our finances for years. Ethan leaned over the papers, his face pale as he processed the full extent of his mother's actions. I could see the guilt flooding his eyes, but there was something else beneath it. Horror, regret, and the crushing weight of a realization that he had been blind to it all. His hands were shaking as he held the documents, the papers fluttering like they were as fragile as his trust in the woman who had raised him. "I never knew," he muttered, almost to himself, staring at the transactions. "I never realized how deep she was in." I couldn't stop the frustration from bubbling up inside me. How could you not see it, Ethan? How could you let her do this to us? I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth, but the anger I felt was overwhelming. She had taken so much from us, our trust, our money, our peace of mind, and Ethan had stood by, unaware of the depths of his mother's control. "I should have been more aware," he said, his voice strained, "but I was blind. I trusted her." I saw the guilt eat away at him, and I hated it. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, but how could I? This was more than just about his mother's manipulations. It was about his own complicity, his silence, while I was the one who bore the brunt of it. But there was no time for blame. Not now. We had to focus on the next step. As I scanned the documents one more time, a sudden realization hit me. It wasn't just about the money. Veronica's actions weren't just about her controlling Ethan. There was something more, something far deeper. My heart began to race as the pieces clicked into place. The last few weeks, her calculated sabotage of our wedding plans, her manipulation of Ethan, it wasn't about money or power for her. It was about losing control, losing her place in his life. 16 years ago, Veronica had always been the center of Ethan's universe. Everything he did, everything he became was in some way a reflection of her. It wasn't just about keeping him close, it was about her fear of being replaced. First, it was his career. Then it was me. I was the new woman in his life, and as much as she wanted to make me feel like an outsider, I wasn't the only one she feared. She feared losing him, losing the one person who had always been her anchor. As the truth about her fear and jealousy began to sink in, I understood the full depth of her manipulation. But the question remained, why had she pushed so hard? Why hadn't she stopped? Ethan had seen it. His shock was visible as he heard the truth in my voice. "She wasn't just controlling me, was she?" he asked quietly, more to himself than to me. She was trying to control everything around me, all the way down to you." His voice trailed off as the weight of the words settled. This was the point of no return. Ethan's mother had turned into something monstrous, not just because of her manipulations, but because of her deep-seated insecurities and fears of being overshadowed. And I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let her tear us apart anymore. The next day, we sat down together, the tension still thick in the air. We had the evidence we needed to confront her, and Ethan was finally ready. "Madison," he said, his voice steady, "we're doing this. We have to confront her. We can't let her control us anymore." The words hung between us, pregnant with the weight of what was about to come. I could feel the pull of the past, the haunting whispers of all the times she had gotten away with it. But we were done hiding. We were done pretending that everything was fine. We were going to face her head on. The next morning, we made our way to Veronica's house. The air felt thick with anticipation, like a storm waiting to break. We had already decided that we couldn't let her tear us apart anymore. This would be the moment where we took back our lives. When Veronica opened the door, I could see the surprise in her eyes. She hadn't expected us to come so soon, or to come together. But as soon as she saw the look in Ethan's eyes, I knew she realized it wasn't going to be easy for her this time. "Ethan," she said, her voice smooth, "I didn't expect to see you here. And with Madison?" Ethan's jaw clenched and I could see the anger rising in him. "It's time we talked, Mom," he said, his voice low but firm. We know what you've been doing, and we're done letting you control our lives." Veronica's face hardened, but I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. She wasn't used to being confronted, and she certainly wasn't used to having her power over her son challenged. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice laced with that fake sweetness that had always masked her manipulation. "You've always been so quick to jump to conclusions, Ethan." But I could see through her. We both could. "We have the evidence, Veronica," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the lies. "We know everything." The room went still. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. She didn't back down. Instead, she stepped forward, her voice dripping with venom. "You think you can control me now? You think you can just walk away from me? I made you, Ethan. I built you. You owe me everything." The words hit him like a slap in the face, but this time he didn't flinch. "I owe you nothing," he said, his voice strong and clear. And just like that, I saw something shift. For the first time, I saw the power dynamic change. Veronica wasn't in control anymore. But as she glared at us, I knew one thing for certain. The battle wasn't over yet. Veronica might have been defeated in that moment, but she wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. I could feel the weight of the decision settling on both Ethan and me. The storm was approaching, and we were standing in the eye of it, ready to face the wind head-on. My hands trembled as I prepared for what was coming. The choice was clear. We either stood up to Veronica now, or her manipulations would continue to unravel everything we had fought for. Ethan had changed in the last few days. It wasn't just his decision to sever ties with his mother, though that had been monumental. No, this was something deeper. Something was shifting within him, something I hadn't expected to see. His face had hardened with determination, but underneath I could still see the guilt and shame. It was a heavy burden, the realization that his entire life had been defined by his mother's control. But now there was something else. Anger. Anger at himself for not seeing it sooner, and anger at Veronica for exploiting his love for her. "I can't believe I didn't see it," Ethan muttered one morning as we went over the final details for our confrontation with Veronica. His voice was strained. "I was so blind. She manipulated me, manipulated everything." I could feel his guilt wrapping around him like chains. But I also saw something else. A man awakening from a deep sleep. He wasn't just angry with Veronica. He was angry with himself for letting her take control for so long. "You were just trying to make her happy," I said, trying to ease the weight of his self-blame. "But now you know the truth, and we'll face it together." He met my gaze, his eyes full of gratitude. "I'm ready. I have to do this. For us." The weight of the decision to confront Veronica head-on felt like a mountain pressing down on us, but it was a mountain that had to be moved. And we were ready. At least I thought we were. We spent the entire day preparing for what would be the biggest confrontation of our lives. We collected the evidence, emails, financial transactions, phone calls, anything that could prove her manipulations. The plan was simple: confront her with the truth, demand she leave us alone, and expose her for the damage she had caused. But as the hours passed, my nerves began to fray. What if Veronica didn't back down? What if this only made things worse? "Are we sure about this?" I asked Ethan, my voice low. I could feel my anxiety creeping up. The fear of what might happen next gnawed at my insides. "Once we do this, there's no going back." Ethan reached out, taking my hand. "We have no choice," he said, his voice firm. "She's already done enough damage. It's time to take control of our lives." I squeezed his hand in return, trying to steady myself, but despite his resolve, I could sense the fear in him too. He was terrified of what his mother might do, and so was I. We gathered our things and left our apartment, heading toward Veronica's house. The drive felt endless. The silence in the car was deafening. We both knew what was at stake, but neither of us could fully grasp the weight of it until we arrived. When we finally pulled up to her house, the reality of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. I looked at Ethan, searching for reassurance, but he gave me a tight, determined smile. "This ends today," he said, his voice steady. I nodded, my heart racing in my chest. We got out of the car and walked up to the door, and as we stood in front of it, I could almost feel Veronica's presence on the other side. I knew she had been expecting this, but I also knew that she didn't understand just how far we were willing to go to take our lives back. When she opened the door, her usual smile faltered for a fraction of a second. It was enough to tell me she knew something was different. Ethan and I stood there side by side, ready for whatever came next. "Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with feigned sweetness. "What a surprise. And with Madison, what is this all about?" Ethan's jaw clenched, but he didn't hesitate. "It's time we talk, Mom. You've done enough. We know everything." Veronica's eyes narrowed, and I could see the panic flicker behind her composed exterior. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her tone now sharper. "We have the evidence," I said, stepping forward. "Everything. The money you've taken. The lies you've fed. The manipulation." Her face turned pale for a split second, but she quickly regained her composure. "You think you can control me now?" she spat. "You think you can just tear apart everything I've built for you, Ethan?" "I'm not your puppet anymore, Mom," Ethan said, his voice low but resolute. "You don't control me anymore. I'm done." Veronica took a step back, visibly shaken, but then something changed. Her anger flared, and she raised her voice, her eyes wild with desperation. "You owe me everything. Do you think you can just walk away from me? I gave you everything. This is how you repay me." Ethan stepped forward, his face hard. "No, you don't get to control me anymore. Not like this." For the first time, Veronica looked small. Her manipulation was no longer working. She was cornered, and the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. But I knew better than to think she was done. She wasn't finished, not by a long shot. "Ethan," she said, her voice breaking for the first time, "I was just trying to protect you. I was just trying to keep you from making a mistake. You don't understand what you're doing." I could hear the vulnerability in her voice, but it didn't soften the blow. She wasn't a victim here. She was a villain, a manipulative, controlling force who had used her son for years. "We understand perfectly," I said, stepping closer to Ethan. "You're just afraid of losing control. But that's not our problem anymore." The silence hung in the air like a thick fog. Veronica's attempts at manipulation had failed, and as I looked at Ethan, I knew we had finally won. But I also knew that Veronica wouldn't go down without a fight. She would come at us again, and we had to be ready. As we turned to leave, Veronica called out one last time, her voice shaking, "You'll regret this." But we didn't stop. We walked out, side by side, our resolve stronger than ever. The silence in the room was deafening as I sat across from Ethan. The decision was made, and there was no turning back. We had fought for so long, endured so much, and now the final act was approaching. I could feel the weight of everything that had happened, the pain, the betrayal, and the uncertainty that had followed us for months. But now, it was time for us to take control. Ethan's eyes were filled with determination, but beneath it, there was a flicker of something else, fear. I could sense it in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened whenever he thought about his mother. But we couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything. "Are you ready for this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. Ethan gave a short nod. "I have to be. We have to be." His words were heavy, the weight of his past and everything he had learned over the last few days pressing down on him. Veronica was still out there, lurking in the shadows, planning her next move. I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. She never had. But what she didn't understand was that we were no longer the people she had manipulated. This time, we would be the ones in control. As the days passed, we continued to gather the evidence. The phone calls, the emails, the threats she had made over the years. It all came crashing down on her. But what we didn't know was that Veronica, ever the schemer, had been planning her escape. She thought she could slip away from the consequences, that she could run and hide from the wreckage she had caused. But she was wrong. I first found out about her escape plans when I overheard a conversation between Ethan and his lawyer. The man was calm, but I could see the concern etched into his face. "Veronica's on the move," he said, lowering his voice so I wouldn't hear. "We've got to act fast. She's trying to disappear. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Veronica was running, trying to leave it all behind, thinking she could escape the truth. I felt a surge of anger, mixed with a strange sense of relief. The end was near. Ethan looked at me, his eyes filled with regret. I didn't think she'd go this far. She'll do anything to keep control, I said, my voice calm but tinged with fury. But she won't win. We made our move. Armed with the evidence, we contacted the authorities, ensuring they knew everything Veronica had been hiding. It was time to end this, to put an end to her reign of manipulation once and for all. But the closer we got, the more desperate Veronica became. Her escape plan unraveled piece by piece, but she was determined to slip away unnoticed. I could imagine her now, contacting old acquaintances, trying to forge a new identity. She was running from everything she had done, hoping she could erase the damage. Yet, she couldn't escape. As we prepared to confront her, the phone rang. It was the police. Veronica had been caught. She's trying to leave the country, the officer told us, his voice clipped. But we've intercepted her plans. She won't be going anywhere. I could feel the relief flood through me, but it was bittersweet. Veronica was going to face the consequences of her actions, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. She wouldn't just accept her fate. She would fight. And this time, she would lose. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. It's over, he said, though I could hear the hesitation in his voice. But I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself for not seeing this sooner. I stepped closer to him, taking his hand. You don't have to forgive yourself, Ethan. You've already made things right, and we're going to get through this together. But despite the relief, despite the fact that Veronica would finally face justice, the scars of everything that had happened lingered. The toll it had taken on our relationship, the emotional toll of dealing with a woman who had manipulated us for years. It would take time to heal. That night, we sat together, the weight of everything sinking in. Ethan's mother was being arrested, her future uncertain, and yet I knew that the hardest part for him was still to come. He would have to rebuild his relationship with his own past, with the family he had once been so loyal to. The emotional cost of his freedom was more than just the legal battles. It was the broken bond between a son and his mother. And for me, I had to come to terms with what Veronica's betrayal had done to me. The trust I had lost, the emotional scars that still haunted me. It was over, yes, but the aftermath was far from easy. Veronica's arrest marked the end of one chapter in our lives, but the emotional healing had just begun. I never thought it would end like this, Ethan whispered, breaking the silence. I thought I could fix everything, that we could fix it. We will, I replied softly, but it's going to take time. We had won the battle, but the war wasn't over. Not yet. We still had a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we had a fighting chance. It was the first morning of our new life. The weight of everything that had happened still hung in the air, but it felt different now, lighter somehow, as though the storm that had raged for so long had finally begun to dissipate, leaving only the faint echoes of what we had endured. Ethan and I sat across from each other at the small cafe by the sea, the waves lapping against the shore just beyond our table. It was our first day away, our first real moment of peace since everything had fallen apart. And I was finally beginning to believe we could start again. I looked over at Ethan. His face was more relaxed now, but his eyes still held the shadows of all the things we had been through. We hadn't spoken much yet, just the silence between us and the gentle murmur of life moving on. It was like we were finally able to breathe. He smiled faintly as I caught his gaze. I never thought we'd get here, he said softly. But here we are. I nodded, my own smile matching his, but I felt the tension that had always been present between us slowly start to fade. It's not perfect, Ethan, I know that, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to heal. With you. Me too. He reached across the table and took my hand in his. I know it's not going to be easy, and I know I've got a lot of work to do, but I'm ready. His words were sincere, and for the first time in a long time, I believed them. We had come here for one reason, to leave the past behind, even if just for a while. But I was beginning to realize that the past didn't disappear just because we decided to take a break. It was still there, in our minds and hearts, like an ever-present shadow. The trip had become symbolic for us, a fresh start, a way to finally sever the ties that had bound us to the toxic cycle of Veronica's manipulation. As much as I wished I could forget what she had done, I knew that the emotional scars would take time to heal. But for the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. And Ethan was finally standing with me, not as a son caught between two worlds, but as my partner, my equal. We spent the days walking along the beach, talking about everything and nothing. We didn't dwell on the past. We spoke instead of the future, our future, what it would look like without the constant tension of Veronica's influence. "I think I'm starting to see it," Ethan admitted one evening as we sat by the fire pit, the flames casting a warm glow on his face. "The life we could have without her. It's possible, isn't it?" I squeezed his hand, feeling the sense of relief that had been building in my chest. "It is, it really is." But as the days passed, I could feel the bittersweetness that still lingered in my heart. We could move forward, but the ghosts of what had happened would always be with us. The damage wasn't something we could just erase, no matter how hard we tried. I had learned that the hard way. The more time we spent together, the clearer it became that we had been in a constant battle, not just against Veronica, but against ourselves. We had fought so hard to stay together, to preserve something worth saving, and now we were starting to see the rewards of that fight. There was still a long road ahead, but for the first time, it felt like we were on the right path. Ethan's guilt was still there. I could see it in his eyes at times, the way he looked at me with such a quiet intensity, as if he was trying to convince himself he deserved my forgiveness. But I had let go of the anger, the resentment, piece by piece, and now I could see the man I had married, the one I had loved before all the chaos began. It wasn't a perfect vision, but it was enough. We talked late into the nights, sharing our hopes and fears. Sometimes we didn't need words at all. The silence between us now was comfortable, a sign that we were beginning to reconnect in ways we hadn't thought possible. On the last night of our trip, we sat on the balcony, the sound of the waves lulling us into a peaceful quiet. The stars were brighter than I had ever seen, scattered across the sky like a million little promises. "Madison," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I know we still have a lot of work to do, but I want you to know something." I turned to face him, the gentle breeze tugging at my hair. "What is it?" "I'm not giving up on us," he said, his eyes dark with sincerity. "Not ever again." And in that moment, I believed him. We returned home a week later, the weight of the past still lingering but lighter now. The tension between us had finally ebbed, replaced by something more hopeful. We were no longer fighting against each other or the past. We were fighting for our future, together. We would face the consequences of our actions and decisions, but we no longer had to face them alone. The path to healing was long, and I knew there would be setbacks, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. The final chapter in the saga of Veronica's manipulation had closed, but the real journey was just beginning, for Ethan, for me, and for us. The struggle was over, and now it was time to rebuild. It's quiet now. The silence isn't filled with the weight of unspoken words or the tension that once clung to every room. No more lingering doubts or unanswered questions. No more manipulation. The dust has finally settled, but the echoes of everything that happened, everything that was lost, still linger. Ethan and I sit together, hands clasped, staring out at the city skyline. The view is familiar, but today it's different. It feels as if the world is slowly exhaling with us, as if it too is letting go of the pain and the anger we've carried for so long. I take a deep breath, trying to shake the last remnants of the turmoil we've survived. "We did it, Ethan," I whisper, my voice thick with emotion. "We really did it." He nods, his grip tightening around my hand. It feels final, like we've reached the end of something. The air between us is heavy with the reality of our victory, but also with the heavy toll it took to get here. We had spent months trapped in a whirlwind of betrayal, manipulation, and grief. Veronica's lies, her control, her greed. It all came to light in ways that destroyed everything in its path. But now, we were free. Free from her toxic grip, free to live without the constant fear of her interference. And yet, freedom doesn't always feel like a celebration. Sometimes, it feels like a slow unraveling of everything you thought you knew. It's bittersweet, this final victory. The phone rings. It's the attorney. I pick it up, a knot forming in my stomach. Ethan watches me, his gaze steady but unreadable. The call feels like the last piece of the puzzle falling into place. Yes, I answer. The attorney confirms it. Veronica has been exposed, her actions laid bare for all to see. The legal consequences are now in motion. She can no longer escape. I feel a rush of relief, a wave of exhaustion crashing over me. This is it. This is the end of the battle. Justice is finally being served. But it doesn't feel like the end. The weight of it all still sits in my chest, heavy, unyielding. I don't know if it will ever go away. The scars of what Veronica did, what she took from us, will always be there, like a part of me that can't be erased. Ethan's hand on mine pulls me from my thoughts. You okay? I look up at him, our eyes meeting in a silent understanding. I'm okay, I say, though it feels like the words don't fully capture everything I'm feeling. I don't know what comes next, after all of this, after everything. He leans in, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead. We move forward, together. That's all we can do. The days that follow are filled with the quiet hum of normalcy slowly creeping back into our lives. Ethan and I find ourselves in a rhythm we haven't had in so long. We go through the motions of daily life, but this time, there's a quiet strength between us. The kind of strength that comes from surviving, from facing the worst of the storm and walking out of it together. And yet, even as we find our footing again, the scars remain. We can't just pretend everything is fine. The hurt, the betrayal, it's still there, lingering in the shadows. But we're learning how to live with it, learning how to rebuild. Madison, Ethan. We take the time to talk about the things we never had the chance to before. The anger, the resentment, the healing that had to happen, even when we didn't know how. I hear his regrets, his guilt. He hears mine. We'll never forget what happened, I say one night as we sit together in the living room, the quiet of the evening wrapping around us like a blanket. But we don't have to let it define us. Not anymore. He nods, his voice rough with emotion. I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner, for not protecting you. You did the best you could, I reply. But we're here now. We have a chance to make it right. And we will. It won't be easy, but it will be ours. The final confrontation with Veronica had felt like an inevitability, a moment we knew had to come. And when it did, it wasn't a dramatic outburst or a final showdown. No, it was the quiet realization that she could no longer hold us in her grip, that her manipulations were exposed for what they were, a desperate attempt to maintain control over a life she could never truly possess. She had underestimated us, all of us. And now, as the legal proceedings unfold, as the consequences of her actions continue to catch up with her, I find a strange sense of peace. It's not the peace of victory. It's not the peace of revenge. It's the peace of knowing that, at long last, we are free. The chapter of Veronica's reign is closed, and while the damage remains, the weight of it doesn't feel as crushing anymore. I know there's still work to do, there's still pain to heal, but for the first time in months, I can finally breathe. Ethan turns to me, his eyes soft but filled with determination. We've been through so much, but we're still here. I smile, feeling the truth of his words settle into my bones. Yeah, we are. And that's all that matters now. The battle is over. The scars are there, but they no longer define us. We're moving forward, together. As I reflect on everything that happened, I realize how much we all grow through adversity. Life isn't always kind, and sometimes the people closest to us can hurt us in ways we never expect. But it's in those moments of pain and betrayal that we truly learn what we're made of. The scars might always remain, but they don't have to define us. One of the most powerful things I learned from this journey is the importance of standing up for yourself. When others try to manipulate or control your life, it's easy to feel powerless. But it's never too late to reclaim your voice, to draw boundaries, and to choose your own path. It may take time and it won't always be easy, but true healing begins when we take back control of our own story. If you've ever been through something similar, whether it's a betrayal, a broken trust, or a loss, remember this. You have the strength to move forward. Don't let anyone steal your peace, and don't let the past keep you from building the future you deserve. The power to change, to heal, and to grow is always within you. So, what's the next step for you? Are you ready to start healing, to let go of the things that hold you back, and to embrace the future? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below and let's start a conversation. If you found this video meaningful and it resonated with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Share this journey with others who might need to hear it too. Let's keep growing together. If you didn't enjoy the video, I'm still open to your feedback. Tell me what you think and where you're watching from. Stay strong, keep moving forward, and remember, you are never alone on this journey.